Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And as always, it is an honour to be able to stand in this place and talk about the important issues facing Canadians. I would, however, just if I could, just take a very, very brief moment to start by saying that a number of weeks ago, a friend of the Conservative Party, and actually the father of a former member, Monty Solberg, his dad, Stan Solberg, passed away, and his funeral that was this past Monday. And I know that many gathered to celebrate the life of Stan Solberg, a true patriot and proud Canadian who I had the chance to work in politics with for many, many years in a volunteer capacity, and even just a number of months ago had a great visit with him. And he was always a visionary, thinking forward about the future of Alberta and the future of this country, a real patriot, a proud Conservative, and certainly a great Alberta and great Canadian. So we remember Stan Solberg here today. And I would further, like some of the members before, this will likely be my last opportunity to rise in this place before I Remembrance Day, and just to say God bless our troops past and present for the work and the sacrifice that they have and continue to do to keep us free. We can never let down our guard to support those who fight so hard for what's right. So God bless our troops, lest we forget. Mr. Speaker, I am once again rising to join in the discussion about a scandal that has paralyzed Parliament. We see a scandal that was initially referred to as one that would make the sponsorship scandal that brought down the Chrétien and Martin government, that it would be mammoth in comparison to that. And I think as details have been revealed, we certainly see how that is truly the case. And Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to be able to rise in my place today with the ability to share some comments. This is also being streamed. The live feed from the House of Commons is being streamed on Facebook. So for those who are watching on my Facebook page, I would welcome them to share their comments and feedback, and look forward to being able to hopefully integrate some of that into the discussion here today. Because here we are when it comes to the misappropriation, conflicts of interest, and what ultimately was nearly $400 million. Taxpayers, hard-earned taxpayers' dollars that was, we have learned, has been given to insiders of the government, is rife with conflicts of interest. And here we are, now more than a month into this debate, when the Speaker of the House of Commons ruled that the government had to release the documents, and yet here we are because the Liberals simply refuse. Now, I'd like to unpack things, because the Liberals they're very, very good at trying to divide and distract away from what the real issue here is. So let me unpack it very, very simply. The Liberals have the ability and the authority to release the documents today, but they refuse.
That's right.
This debate, it wasn't started by the Conservatives. It was started by and has been sustained by those Liberals who refuse to release the documents. Now, they'll talk about privacy. They'll talk about the independence of the judiciary, and they'll talk about all these things. But what they fail to talk about at every step of the process is they have the right, and I would suggest the responsibility, to uphold the standard that Canadians would expect of a government of any color, and to be transparent. There is nothing that is stopping those Liberals from walking in to this place and placing on the table those documents. There is nothing that is stopping them from releasing them, but they refuse. So as a result, Parliament is exercising its constitutional authority, the ability that Parliament has by nature of what Parliament is. We are exercising our ability to demand for these documents, and taking great care to not interfere in the process of justice, making sure that we are ensuring that great care is taken in all of those regards. But Mr. Speaker, it comes down to the simple truth, the fact of the matter. The Liberals could today release the documents, but they refuse. So one has to ask the question, what are they hiding? What is so embarrassing? What types of scandal and corruption would be revealed if those things came to light? So, Mr. Speaker, I think that it is becoming increasingly clear that the cover-up to those Liberals is more important than anything else that government has been tasked to do. They have allowed those Liberals, that Prime Minister and those Liberals, have now for more than a month paralyzed Parliament. This is on them. They could release the documents. I have heard from Amber and saying that Amber's asking the questions, are there no repercussions about the corruption that has been proven? Because here we have, and Amber, thank you for that question, we have a clear example. The Auditor General, the nonpartisan officer of Parliament who looks at the books, found that there was incredible discrepancies, and there has been conflicts of interest found at every stage of the process, and it has caused an erosion of trust. And I'm asked the question often, if a regular Canadian was to do what this Prime Minister, that cabinet, and those members keep doing, are there not consequences? Would there not be prison time? Would there not be criminal prosecutions? Yet we have those Liberals using what is now more than a month, paralyzing the actions of Parliament in order to cover up, to keep these documents from being released. We have Lise that asks the question, that says, she says, what about the corruption that happened in the Winnipeg lab document? And it certainly is. That's I know a number of my colleagues have spent, there's 20 minutes allotted to each of these speeches. And in some cases, I've had a number of colleagues that have started listing off the number of scandals that the Liberals have happened under that Prime Minister and these Liberals. And you can hardly get through just reading the list after 9 years of these Liberals. And the question surrounding the Winnipeg lab documents, where it was the Liberals, unprecedented, they took the Speaker to court. Unprecedented that the government would take the Speaker to court to cover up their corruption, to cover up and like we are seeing again with this 400 million green slush fund scandal, Mr. Speaker, we are seeing that the Liberals seem to have no, that they'll stop at nothing, including paralyzing Parliament for months on end to keep the truth from coming up, which leads us to ask what I think is a very fair question, and from what I'm hearing from folks that are watching this debate right now, there has to be accountability. Patricia says that there needs to be stiffer penalties in Canada, laws to protect Canadians and Canadian tax dollars against this sort of corruption and to stop the conflicts of interest. That, Mr. Speaker, sounds like common sense. Canadians want an election. It needs to end so that we can get a government in to clean this up. Absolutely. That's Patricia, who is frustrated, obviously, with the corruption that we are seeing. Esther is asking, are there no rules that can be enforced? Well, it's a good thing Parliament exists, because this is the final mechanism to which even the Liberals, while they try each and every day to force Parliament to bend to their will, the Conservatives will not do so. We will stand up for the rights of Canadians, including democracy, which is represented in this place. So to Esther, Conservatives are fighting for accountability, and absolutely essential in the way that we go about everything we do here. And that includes making sure that we continue to demand that the Liberals release the documents, to get answers on the $400 million green slush fund, the $400 million green slush fund, where there is obviously, where there's smoke, there's fire, Mr. Speaker, as the old adage goes. And I think what has become incredibly clear is that when it comes to these Liberals, they are covering up something. Nobody would go to the great lengths that they have to cover up corruption unless they had something truly to hide. So the questions asked, are there no rules? Well, it's a good thing Parliament exists, because Parliament and the premise of parliamentary supremacy in this place, Mr. Speaker, persists beyond a corrupt Prime Minister and a government that is certainly not worth the cost. Jordan is asking asking a great question. Why are there so many silent Liberals? Jordan is asking why the member from Malpeque and other Liberals refuse to stand up and ask for accountability. Do they work for the Prime Minister, or do they work for their constituents? I think it's a very, very fair question. So, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of Jordan, I ask that question to every Liberal member of Parliament. Will you not stand up for the people who sent you here, beyond the guy who sits in the front row that has proven himself to not care about their best interests, certainly, but the best interests of the country? Because time and time again, he shows how he will put his personal political gain ahead the best interests of the country. And that, Mr. Speaker, is absolutely unacceptable. Debbie says somebody should be able to stop Trudeau and the corruption. I agree. It's a good thing. Oh, sorry, my apology. It was a quote. In the Saskatchewan legislature, Mr. Speaker, I do withdraw that. In the Saskatchewan legislature, you are allowed to read quotes. So my work for at a time in the Saskatchewan legislature led it's a habit that one has to reflect. But the question, I think, is incredibly valid, and I'm glad that Liberals opposite are paying attention, because they should listen to what Debbie has to say, because they're saying somebody should stop the corruption. Well, Debbie, the good news is Conservatives are fighting every day on your behalf, and as soon as we're able to get that carbon tax election, we're going to get a common sense government led by the member from Carleton, who's going to bring back integrity and accountability into the way that we do things in this place. And certainly when it comes to, in the meantime, we're going to continue to stand up for Canadians to fight that corruption, whether it's with the $400 million Green Slush Fund or the many other examples of corruption. And and Michael asks the question about a coalition. Is there not to demand that there would be no more coalitions? And I think, Mr. Speaker, what's interesting about that is in the last election, Conservatives actually said, look, a vote for the NDP is a vote for the Liberals. And we were told at the time that that wouldn't happen. There'd be no coalition, yet it was only months after the last election that out-marched the leader of the NDP, along with the Prime Minister, with their so-called confidence and supply agreement, a blank check to do everything. And even though that the leader of the fourth party supposedly ripped up the agreement, they still seem to be very, very willing to support that Prime Minister being in charge. Eva says there should be no scandals. There should be no scandals, because it's not, and that emphasizes a very important point, because it's not, the government talks a lot about money they spend, but the simple truth of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, is it's not their money. The $400 million in Green Slush Fund dollars that were allocated in conflicts of interest and to Liberal insiders and those with connections to the SDTC is one example of many. But every dollar that government spends, Mr. Speaker, it is not government's money. It comes from somewhere. And in particular, it comes from hard-working Canadians in the form of taxes. And certainly, there should be no scandals, because every person that makes a decision when it comes to the public purse should take great care to ensure that that money is treated responsibly. Unfortunately, we see the devastating consequences that after 9 years of Justin Trudeau, I may have spoken for a little while this morning at the Justice Committee. So I would, those Liberals, it is time for accountability, including that Prime Minister. Kerry says, when are we going to get taxpayers' money returned? And that's exactly it. I know when it comes to the policy role I have the opportunity to be a part of right now in the position of Heritage, we're demanding that the $18 million in bonuses that were paid out to executives and managers at the CBC be returned. It just makes sense. You have a failing organization, led by a failing government that pays themselves bonuses, in fact, changed the rules. So, Mr. Speaker, whether it's the SDTC, whether it's the CBC, whether it's the myriad of other scandals that we have, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that Canadians want their money back. It is absolutely essential that the respect for taxpayers' money is returned to this place. We need to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that we are respecting that this place respects the immense privilege that we all have to steward the democracy of the land, and by nature of the way that our Parliament works is and it's interesting because quite often the intricacies of Parliament are not necessarily always well understood, which is unfortunate. And for somebody that is passionate about the systems to which we've developed the Parliament of Canada, the Westminster system, and its history dating back so many centuries. But it is only by act of Parliament, by will and proclamation of Parliament, that any dollar is able to be spent. And it's interesting because in that history, it speaks to something that is often forgotten. When there was in centuries past kings in the United Kingdom that wanted money, wanted to tax people, wanted to tax their subjects, there was significant conflict, and quite often it would happen as war. But you saw throughout history there was this coming together to say, look, it is time to ensure that the people have a voice. So that is why, despite a time when the Liberals tried to pass a motion that would have given them unlimited spending and taxation authority for a period of 18 months. That was unprecedented in Westminster democracy, that they would try to do that. They tried to slip it through and say, oh, it's time for a Team Canada approach, was their excuse, when the reality was, if they wanted a Team Canada approach, they would have done the hard work to ensure taxpayers' dollars were respected, yet they refused to do so. As Paula says, these people are using our money, not theirs.
Not their money.
I absolutely agree, Mr. Speaker, with Paula. Randy says, Canadians want, I'm quoting this, Canadians want a carbon tax election. I have another comment here that says that the amount of money that is being spent, money going out the door to scandals, to interests that don't necessarily reflect that of what Canadians want. We have Jacqueline that says we need to have action to take on this. And I would say to Jacqueline, the action is very, very simple. Very, very simple. The Liberals need to release the documents, but they are so obsessed with this cover-up that they are willing to throw out their agenda, for the purposes of covering up that corruption. So, Mr. Speaker, I am grateful for the opportunity to have once again entered into this debate where we have seen the close to $400 million spent. We have hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayers' money being sent. And I would just emphasize, because the Liberals are quick to suggest that, oh, well, you know, hasn't this thing been around for a long time? This fund that gave grants to develop clean and new energy. And the fact is, Mr. Speaker, it has been around for a long time. But it was the Liberals that broke it.
That's right.
Because up until 2018, and former Industry Minister Navdeep Bains, who didn't like the board because it resembled too much of what Harper had in terms of a vision, they replaced the board, and since that point in time, it has been rife with scandals. So as I conclude, I would say very, very clearly, and I'd just give a shout out to my wife Danielle. She commented on there too, so that's love you, sweetheart. But
you take out the garbage.
It is. I would conclude by saying this, Mr. Speaker. Canadians deserve answers. Canadians deserve to see these documents. There needs to be accountability. And it comes at the fundamental premise of what democracy is, and that is accountability. I regret that after so many weeks, the Liberals are still so bent on covering up things that they would paralyze Canada's Parliament in order to serve their own personal political interests, Mr. Speaker. It's time for better, and Conservatives will bring it home.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've spent almost my entire day listening to this member speak, and he talks about accountability. I just spent 3 hours in the Justice Committee listening to him filibuster, trying to block his own colleague from Peace River Westlock because he had this very compelling argument that C-270 should come to this House as soon as possible so it could be debated. I walk up here, and now I'm listening to him give a speech about this privilege so that nothing can be debated. So I want to know whether he's prepared to go talk to his House leader, make the argument that was so compelling this morning to see if they will end this privilege nonsense and allow his colleague to A, appear at committee, and B, come here and have this discussion again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
You know, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm glad that member took me up on my offer to continue the debate on this very important issue here in the House of Commons. And I would suggest simply this: he should tell his leader, the Prime Minister, and and the members of the cabinet that he sits in the same party with, that the answer to solving the problem of Parliament being paralyzed is release the documents. Now, when it comes to Bill C-270, I would hope that that member would support having a bill that would place strict penalties for anybody that would share without consent explicit material, and would ensure that there is age verification for any explicit material shared in this country. I think, Mr. Speaker, that's pretty clear common sense. It's too bad that that member and those Liberals have so mismanaged the legislative agenda in this country that their scandals are paralyzing the good work that this place should be able to do.
Commentaire. L'honorable député de Saint-Hyacinthe.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we've said several times, we agree that we need the documents and that this is unacceptable. Now, why don't we have a vote on this? My question to my colleague: do members of the Conservative Party realize that they're actually helping the Liberals? Because with this House grinding to a halt, the Liberals can do what they like best, which is nothing.
River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's interesting because we have this weird circumstance. We have one scandal that is, for those watching, it's called a privilege motion. So it takes priority, and in this case, it's because they refuse to release documents. But the next order of business in line is actually another scandal. So we have this circumstance where it's not just one scandal that's being debated, there's another scandal in line to be debated. And when it comes to the Liberals, very interestingly, they say, oh, well, we want to send this to committee to make it disappear. Well, here's the fact of the matter. They had an opportunity to vote to support a motion and a sub-amendment to send this to committee, and they voted against it. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it's become increasingly clear. The Liberals don't care about accountability. They simply care about covering it up. And I would close by saying Maxine says, don't you work for us. We deserve our taxpayer money to be spent responsible. Maxine, I agree with you.
Yes, Maxine.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
And it's my first time rising in the House today. I'd just like to acknowledge very quickly that it's International Inuit Day, and I hope that everyone enjoys this day. So I have a community in Nunavut called Kimmirut. They just had a 4-day power outage, and it's becoming winter quite soon. There were a lot of people that were quite concerned with their well-being because of having no power in that community. And I wonder if the member shares outrage with me regarding the Sustainable Development Technology Canada not investing in potential sustainable development opportunities in Nunavut. That power plant in Kimmirut runs on diesel, and there needs to be more ways to ensure that we're transitioning to renewable energy. And I wonder if he'd share his comments about whether the Sustainable Development Canada, Technology Canada is not doing enough to make sure that it's focusing on its investments on sustainable development technology.
Honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and my colleague from Nunavut and I join with her in acknowledging National Inuit Day, and I know the leader of the opposition just put out a statement acknowledging that just a little bit earlier today, so I join with her in that. And to note, the Environment Commissioner, actually, I believe in a report that was just released today, just tabled in this place today, talked about that exact thing and how after 9 years of the Liberals claiming to solve all the problems that exist in this country, they have done nothing more than make their friends rich. The consequence of that is very, very real to those in Northern Canada who are facing days without power, to those who are facing energy and food insecurity from coast to coast to coast. Mr. Speaker, the consequences of Liberal mismanagement truly are devastating to Canadians. I just hope that we can wake up to the reality that until there's a change, there won't be a change in government, there won't be a change in the direction of this country.
Questions and comments? The honourable for Edmonton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me thank my colleague for his excellent talk today. I'm glad he was able to read or at least mention the comment from his wife. I know if I read a comment from my wife on Facebook, it'd be like, why didn't you take out the trash again? But part of the STDC issue is Industry Canada has a contribution agreement with STDC, the Green Slush Fund, that requires the board to report any conflicts of interest, real or perceived, with the Minister of Industry. Now, it's right in the contribution agreement signed off. Now, the Auditor General has found well over 80 conflicts of interest. So I wonder if my colleague is wondering, like I am wondering, is the government refusing to hand over the documents because it actually shows that the Liberal-appointed board had conflicts of interest and reported it to both the past minister, Navdeep Bains, and the current minister, and they refused to act because they're more interested in supporting Liberal insiders than protecting taxpayers' money.
The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And my colleague from West Edmonton Mall makes a very, very good point. This is the clear conflict that exists when it comes to the depth of this scandal. Why are the Liberals so intent at covering up this $400 million scandal? Well, those documents, I have the suspicion, Mr. Speaker, would reveal exactly that, because they were required to report conflicts of interest, yet those Liberals that were in charge of managing those conflicts to ensuring that they didn't happen, Mr. Speaker, the question is, why didn't they do anything about it? Canadians want answers. I support Canadians that are calling for those answers. I just wish the government would finally release the documents so that we could get them.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The honourable member for Yorkton Melville.
Thank you so much, Speaker. You know, we just heard from the member from up in Inuit the incredible disappointment with what's happening with this fund when there are so many things that it could have been spent on properly. I'd like my colleague to talk about our young people who, of course, are concerned about the environment, also having a home, being able to afford to go to school, all these dynamics. And we have a Minister of the Environment who has been found wanting in this area where he is responsible and claiming carbon tax is crucial, and yet where is this money going?
The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot has just a little over a minute to respond.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the question because it brings up a very, very important point. And it's that the Liberals, in the midst of their corruption and in the midst of the issues with the SDTC and the other list of scandals and everything associated with that, it's that Canadians are hurting. And Canadians do care about the environment, including many of the energy workers that I represent, the farmers that I represent. We all care deeply about the environment. And the reality of that is that Canada is a world leader. Yet it's under these Liberals that instead of unleashing the potential of this country, they are holding it back for their personal political and partisan gains. And when it comes to the scandal before us, it seems that it's not just their political gains that they're holding things back for. It seems like it's for their personal financial gains and the gains of their friends. Madam Speaker, it is time for a change in this country to bring back accountability, bring home a government that can be trusted to spend taxpayers' dollars with the respect they deserve. Accountability is needed. Let's get it now. Release the documents.